Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss Star Wars. So I'm recording this on May 5th. Sadly, I did not get to even do an upload on actual Star Wars Day, so this one's a bit late, but wanted to do Star Wars. I've surprisingly never done it, even though it's one of my favorites. I've been really hardcore on Resident Evil as of late, and most of this series typically involves like specifically video games and not movie franchises, but Star Wars is Star Wars. I've been watching Star Wars ever since I was a kid, honestly, probably about the same age as when I started playing Resident Evil, because I was like 5 when I started playing Resident Evil, and I'm pretty sure I was about 5 or so the first time I saw Star Wars, because I actually went to see it with my parents in theaters when they did the special edition re-releases. So I got to see, at the very least, we saw A New Hope. I don't think we ended up seeing, Empire and Return, but I definitely saw A New Hope in theaters. So that was also the first time my parents ever took me to the movie. So my first ever movie-going experience was as a kid seeing Star Wars A New Hope on the big screen. So it's kind of, that was it. And it was pretty much cemented at that point that I was gonna love Star Wars. And that's just how it's been ever since, all the movies, all the, different versions of the movies, if you will, except for the original. I still have not seen like the original version of the movies. I do want to do that. I know that they're out there. I know I can get like, the 4K stuff. I really have to one day I'll actually look into just flat out downloading them and getting them for real. I did look into it at one point, but I think whatever I was doing at the time, it wasn't like the accurate versions, but at some point I will officially do that. I remember one time when I was a kid, I actually asked my mom to rent the original versions of the movies. Even as a kid, I was that nerdy about it, because you have Star Wars at home, which it was like an idea. It wasn't like the meme. It was like, we do actually have Star Wars at home. Although I guess you could still use the meme. It was like, we have Star Wars at home, and then you could put whatever random, put the Jabba the Hutt thing like Star Wars at home, Jabba the Hutt, in A New Hope. But we did have Star Wars at home, so of course she was not gonna let me rent, Empire Strikes Back from, Hollywood Video at the time, just so I can see the original versions of the film. But I do remember that. I remember being like, man, I actually want to see the original versions. I know enough about Star Wars to know I've seen the special edition. I want to see the OG version. So still haven't done that. Definitely need to get on that for sure. But been watching Star Wars ever since I was a kid. Played a bunch of the games, watched a bunch of the shows. Looking forward to Mando and Grogu. I'm very curious how good that's gonna end up being, if I'm being totally honest. I like The Mandalorian. I know people have their issues with season 3, and they do some dumb stuff in that. I still, to this day, I'm like, how did they get to that planet? How did the Mandalorians get to the actual planet that they're on, but they don't have a ship? Their whole thing when Bo-Katan showed up was like, oh my God, she has a ship. She can chase the big bird down. Also, once again, another element of that planet. There's a lot of stuff they were doing wrong on that planet. They're like, yeah, that bird keeps killing all the kids. What do you mean keep, second time? Once it happens once, you guys are prepared. You're Mandalorians, right? That's the thing. You guys are, shooting missiles and rockets off the water. Once again, makes no sense. But, you guys are just having up. They had the ceremony in the water, and the thing came out the water, and they had to all fight, and it's like, that could have been the first time. We'll say that was the first time, but they specifically said the bird had come a couple of different times. It's like, you guys, what are you doing? Then they go out with the jetpacks I ran out of fuel. You didn't know you were gonna run out of fuel this time, even though you did it last time? What are you talking about? So there were things that were wrong in season 3, for sure. But I still enjoyed it. I still had a good time with it. I'm all, Mandalorians are literally my favorite part of Star Wars, so one of those things where you get a bit of a bias where I can still enjoy it, even despite some of the issues that definitely stand out. But the stuff that was done well, I was like, I can still enjoy it enough. So that's, kind of where my head was at when it came to that. But I am very curious. I'm like, okay, it seems like it'll be fun. Seems like it'll be cool. The trailers, a lot of people said they went very, honestly, I want to say more Indiana Jones style, where it was grand adventure and stuff like that. It was more about just being silly and lighthearted, and then it was like, okay, here's some of the more serious stuff that's gonna happen, and we'll see how it all ends up unfolding. We'll see what in the world this ends up meaning for, of course, Ahsoka season 2 and stuff like that. So there's quite a few questions involved in how this movie's gonna turn out and what it's gonna lead to, based on all the different little components that they have going in the background. So I'm excited to see it. It's the first time we've had Star Wars in how many years? It's been a hot minute. It's been 8 years or something since the last one in theaters, and I'm excited to see it. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing a Star Wars movie in theaters. I already know what shirt I'm wearing. I got a Boba Fett Terminator mashup t-shirt. Fantastic. So that's the shirt I'm wearing to see Mando and Grogu, but I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's a really good movie. I hope that it does something to kind of, especially for the, it admittedly, season 3 lost a lot of people. I'm hoping it brings some people back, because Boba Fett and Mando season 3 were a bad combo for a lot of people. And I'm, like I said, I like Mando, but let me tell you, I was not the biggest fan of the Boba Fett show. I loved the first 2 episodes. Episode 2 was great. I was like, okay, flashback with the Tusken Raider, all that stuff. I was, all right, this is good. I'm enjoying this. And then the show just kept going. And I was like, okay, well, the Mandalorian episodes, which obviously were supposed to be the first 2 effing episodes of, season 3, those were great as well, naturally. But the actual Boba Fett stuff, as even Tamir Morrison himself has said, was like kind of not really what I was thinking Boba Fett should have been doing. But that seems to be one of those things. We had it happen to Luke, we had it happen to Boba Fett. So it's unfortunate, but there are still bits and pieces that we can enjoy, and maybe they'll pop up. I know there's been a lot of behind the scenes, this is happening, that's not happening, people will show up, won't show up. I try not to look into it because I don't want any spoilers anyway. So I'm like, hey, if Ahsoka shows up in the movie, that's a surprise to me. I'm just letting anything happen, and I'm just gonna wait and see how it all unfolds. But as a whole, I still absolutely love Star Wars. It's still amazing. It has its issues here and there. Unfortunate that the Solo movie didn't get a sequel, because they had Darth Maul in live action again, and I was super hyped for that. And that movie was good. That movie got killed because of The Last Jedi, and that's really unfortunate, because The Last Jedi, I'm not the biggest fan of either, like a lot of people, and that killed Solo. And I'm like, Solo is a good adventure movie. Like, that is a good just Star Wars Han Solo story. Like, that was actually a really good movie. And I'm like, man, I think it did get crapped on. It got killed because the last movie that came out, everybody was like, that's where we're at, huh? So unfortunately, that happened to Han Solo, and that sucks, because that movie is actually pretty good. So at least that's my opinion. I would love to know your thoughts on that, but that's my opinion. I always thought, like, man, something with Han Solo shouldn't feel like that, especially because it actually wasn't that bad. So unfortunate, and that's sadly just dead and gone. But that movie was actually pretty decent. I enjoyed it. But we're in an era that is fascinating. Like, we're definitely in that era of, for one, we have lots of shows, but also we have a lot of good animated stuff coming out. Like, obviously Clone Wars has always been one of my favorite things, and if there's one thing that doesn't miss, except for the Tales of the Empire, that wasn't that great, admittedly. The first one though, Tales of the Jedi, was phenomenal. Tales of the Empire was, it wasn't all that in a bag of chips, but it was all right. Like, it was okay. It should have been way better. Like, it seemed like it was going to be really good. And like the first episode where it was like, oh, they're killing off the Night Sisters and Grievous is showing up, I was like, okay, this is a good start. This I can enjoy. And then after that, it was just like, oh, this did not go how I was hoping. Where it just wasn't as good as I expected it to be. And that was just really unfortunate. It was like, Tales of the Empire did not go the way I wanted it to, with like the Night Sister storyline. Some of the stuff they did after that I thought was still okay, but it was like, this wasn't everything that I was really hoping for, if I'm being totally honest. But we'll see how that continues on. But of course, we have, we got an actual final season for Clone Wars. That was amazing. One of the best Star Wars Day ever was watching the finale of Clone Wars on Star Wars Day. That jump was amazing. Also, you guys can watch my reaction to that if you care. But that was fantastic. Bad Batch I thought was really good. Honestly, I think Bad Batch just got better every single season. It got darker and darker. It was very akin to actual Clone Wars, where it started off a bit lighthearted, even though it started, technically their introduction was in like the final season of Clone Wars. But it started out and it was like, okay, it's a bit lighthearted. It was still fairly serious, and they were doing like the cool missions and everything and on the run. But it just got crazier and crazier. I'm like, you guys basically blew up Kamino. Like, they were doing some wild stuff in that show. Plus Cad Bane showed up, and I'm like, if there's anything that can happen that's a 10 out of 10, it's Cad Bane. Like, when he showed up in Boba Fett, let me tell you, he was in the distance, and I instantaneously was like, oh my God, it's Cad Bane. Did he look the way he should have looked? He did not. He doesn't look horrible, but it is weird that they couldn't have just made him dark blue and just actually done like the CG. It's super odd to me that they couldn't have just done, or even made like an actual mask and somehow made that work. But he still looks cool. It was weird that they changed like how he looked though. But he was still amazing. He was still Cad Bane. But of course, when he showed up in the Bad Batch and it was like out of nowhere, and they just walk back to their ship, boom, Cad Bane was there, and it's like, that dude is automatic 10 out of 10. He's one of my favorite characters. Cad Bane is like instantaneously, I'm happy. So, you know, like that's always fantastic. That's why, like, I forgot what the third one was. Was it like Tales of Outlaws or whatever that like third season was? Because I don't think that wasn't the Empire, but that last thing where it was him and then God, I cannot remember her name for the life of me. I can't remember her name right now, but you know what I'm talking about. You know, Dooku's apprentice. That's crazy. I can't remember her name. That's gonna drive me nuts all day. Like, I should know her name. Like, boom, snap my finger. I should be able to call her name up. But their episodes I thought were pretty decent. Hers was like, okay, you know, more lighthearted. Of course, it was after her death and everything. And once again, I didn't mention animation, but the animation has just been getting better and better. And now we have Maul. I've only watched the first 3 episodes. I watched like right up to the part where he like takes his lightsaber back. I won't go into any more details. I'll just say that part. But that's where I'm at right now, and I'm like, this I'm loving. Like the dialogue and the way that he was written and the way it's performed, absolutely amazing. And I love. He's my favorite character in Star Wars. It's actually Darth Maul. Darth Maul is like my #1 character. Ahsoka is actually my #2. And Luke Skywalker is my #3. So for anyone who's like, oh, you know, where's it at? Even though I did start as a kid, and honestly, it's because, like, if I had money, if I was a little older, I think it would be different because I would have read those comics back in the day. Like, I only had one comic as a kid, and it was Boba Fett, Enemy of the Empire, like part 1. That's like the one comic that I always remember having as a kid. That was like the Star Wars comic that I owned, and that was it. So I think if I ever read the books back in the day and did, like, you know, what is now Legends canon and everything, I think I would, you know, clearly, you know, it just takes time. It's really just more stories. It just makes you, you know, more attached to the character. So I think that's really it. But Luke is still like my #3 character in the entire franchise. But Darth Maul is my #1. You know, of course, he came in with the double-sided lightsaber. First time I ever really knew about that. But fun fact, double-sided lightsabers were first experienced on the PlayStation 1. If you have the Star Wars Master of Teräs Käsi, that game has a character with a double-sided lightsaber in it. So that's where that actually, I don't think that was like the first time that ever happened. It could be, you'd have to look into that. But I know that it was like readily available to us as kids. Like, it, you know, episode 1 was just the first time it was in a movie. So it was the first time I knew it happened. Also, I never got that game. I had a demo of that game that I played like crazy because it was a Star Wars fighting game. Of course I wanted that game, but sadly I never got it. So as a kid, if I'd known that, I would have lost my mind. Like, holy crap, I would have found that way younger and be like, dang, they have double-sided lightsabers. Never, literally, until episode 1 came out, I never even thought of it. It was just one of those things where, like, it's an actual invention where you're just like, how did I never think of that? And I just didn't. Never once thought of it. And Donatello was my favorite Ninja Turtle. Never thought of, like, what if a bow staff was a lightsaber and it was lightsabers on 2 sides? Never in my life did I think of it. Episode 1 comes out and it's like, oh, that's beautiful. That's just beautiful. So that's kind of how that began for me. Of course, is episode 1 with the double-sided lightsaber, and he was still super cool. He definitely wasn't my favorite at the time because, of course, he was in 1 movie and then, you know, he was in half, and then that was about it. It was like, dang, they killed him off. That sucks. Like, he was super awesome. And then Clone Wars finally hits, and I want to say he showed up in like season 2 was when they first brought him all back, but that was when it was like, oh, okay, he lived. And he's got like a crazy, you know, the super crazy spider body that he started off with. And it was like, okay, this is kind of insane. And then it just got crazier and crazier and crazier. And I was like, holy crap, Darth Maul is awesome. And just fun to watch. And it's tragic. I think that's honestly a big part of why I love his story is because it's a dark story. Like, it's actually sad. Realistically, like, of course, he's a villain. But he's a villain who was betrayed by a worse villain. And so then he's the character, like, no, I was thinking about it as I was watching the 3 episodes of Maul that I saw. I was like, you know what? He's the character that eventually, it would have taken a long effing time, especially for Darth Maul. It would have taken a long effing time. And he also probably would have had to just give up on the Obi-Wan situation. Like, if he didn't kill him, yeah, let's be honest. So, but if something happened there where he had the time, he's the character that would have eventually just been like the anti-hero. Like, you're not really the worst of the worst, but obviously you're not like a good guy. Like, that's where Darth Maul would have landed if he had the time to do that, but he clearly did not. Also, I know you can hear the rain. It's raining like crazy right now, but I already started the video, so we're gonna keep on keeping on, because that's how it's gonna be. But very great character. Always, like, just super cool. Obviously, the double-sided lightsaber. He was just a fun villain to watch. Everything that he did was like he always took these amazing steps. And Maul is a great example. He always has these really great steps. He can lead, leading the Crimson Dawn, like everything, and then of course all this stuff falling apart over and over again. He's like Sisyphus, trying to push the boulder up a hill, and it's like, all I'm trying to do is kill the Emperor. That's it. And in all honesty, he's one of the few people doing one of the, attempting to do one of the greatest things you could do in the galaxy, which is kill the Emperor. And that's crazy. And it's like, man, technically speaking, he's on the right side of things. Unfortunately, it just didn't matter. But I love the story of him trying. And he just couldn't, obviously raised by the dark side and all that stuff. So even though he had his goal to be like, let me take out the Emperor, he also had his first big loss. And he was like, man, Obi-Wan Kenobi, I gotta kill him. And he couldn't let it go. Like, he had so much time. And if he had let it go, who knows what would have happened. I don't know if they ever would have teamed up or anything, obviously, with the whole Tatooine situation and all that jazz. Especially with Obi-Wan looking super old, and like they had to wear, you can't tell with Maul because obviously, his skin and everything, so it's difficult to tell. But I'm like, yeah, he doesn't exactly look old compared to Obi-Wan, who just looks like an old dude now, which is kind of funny. But always loved Darth Maul. He's like favorite character, super cool, super deadly, but just trying to push that boulder up the hill, and it just didn't work for him. But phenomenal ending to like his whole story, like just great. Like love Darth Maul. Ahsoka, similar situation. Obviously introduced in the Clone Wars movie, which I did see in theaters with my father, and it was like, oh, okay, that's a movie. We saw it. Wasn't exactly hyped for that show after the movie. Like I think we can. I think it's fair to say most of us were in that camp. So, it is what it is, but, that's how it went. It was that first movie, and then it got better. It got way better. The show was actually great. And it started off, once again, like I said, with Bad Batch. It was like, okay, it started off kind of like, all right, it's kiddie. Obviously you see the movie, it's very simple, very basic. It's like, all right, we're going to add some stories in between episode 2 and episode 3, and we're going to actually live through the Clone Wars. Surprise, secret apprentice of Anakin Skywalker. All right, there's like this little kid, kind of annoying, as kids can be. Let's see how this turns out. And then it was like, oh, this is God tier. This is like some of the best Star Wars that's ever been made is in Clone Wars, which is really unfortunate because there's so many people that will not watch the animated stuff. Like I get tired of saying it, like, please watch Clone Wars, watch Star Wars Rebels, exact same thing. Starts off much lighter, especially because that was the actual Disney era. So that starts off fairly light, and then it never gets as dark as Clone Wars really got, but they definitely have some good stuff in there. I definitely enjoyed Rebels. That was super awesome. And once again, that's where we got more Darth Maul. It was like, holy crap. So Rebels is great. Clone Wars is great. I would love to see some of those other characters come back. Obviously, we did get all of them. Now I think about it. So I was going to say we got most of them, but no, everybody was there except for Zeb. Zeb didn't show up in Ahsoka, but obviously we'd already seen him in Mando, and he's going to be in the movie. So we've seen everyone from Rebels, obviously who's alive, post Rebels. So that's actually kind of cool. But really great stuff in the animated shows, and it's really unfortunate that so many people won't ever acknowledge it because it's the classic situation, like the stigma against animation as a whole, where it's like, it's for kids. And it's like, yeah, it kind of started that way. Both Clone Wars and Rebels, when they first kick off, they're the more lighthearted Star Wars style, and then when it gets serious, it gets serious. Like they couldn't do Cartoon Network series where they were straight up decapitating people. And I'll never forget, and they changed it, and I don't think it's on Disney Plus either. And I know for a fact that they changed it, and I don't know if I don't know if you can find it on like old DVDs or what. I don't even remember what episode, but it's like one of the first couple of episodes. It was the episode where they introduce you to like a lot of the clones, where we get like Fives and everybody. It was that episode where they're all shinies, and there was the part where they first encounter the worm, and one of the characters said, damn. And they said it on Cartoon Network, and that was always a big deal. It was like when they play the Hellboy movies, and he said hell, or he would say damn, and it's like, whoa, they let that slide. It's not 8 o'clock yet. Like, you can't be letting that slide so early. But they did that in an episode of Clone Wars, and I never forgot that, because he said, like, damn. Or he either said damn, or what the hell was it? It was one of those two things. And it was like, holy crap, he just swore in Star Wars, on Cartoon Network. And every time I saw a rerun of that episode, it's changed. They changed that line out where he doesn't swear anymore. But I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, holy crap, they let him swear on Cartoon Network. And I cannot believe that flew. And I think of that very randomly, but I'm like, that's crazy. I can't believe they let that slide. Because there's no, like, it's crazy it got through at all. But then of course they changed. They're like, all right, we let you get that one time. Like that cannot happen again. Like you cannot be saying damn at 6:30 in the afternoon. Like it ain't Adult Swim time yet. So I always thought that was pretty funny, but that always stuck out to me from watching that episode. And of course, meeting all the clones and going through all the stories of the different characters, you get to experience more of the Jedi. Like you get to see more of them, and like other cool characters. Plo Koon, where he's like cool with the clones. The big dude who was like dual wielding two double-sided lightsabers, which is pretty sick, and they were like folded like nunchucks and stuff. He was an absolute a-hole where he was just like, none of you guys are important, and he was just a real douchebag, and then he was kind of evil in general. It was like, stories, different Jedi, different ideas for what a Jedi should be, and different ways of handling a literal war. So it was exciting. It was a fantastic show. I always loved that show. And of course, long before Clone Wars, whether it was the 3D version, and of course, gotta give a shout out to the Genndy Tartakovsky version. Like the 2D Clone Wars was pretty awesome. Very weird first watching it, because when they started out and it was shorts, like when you watch it all together, it's way more entertaining. But I remember the first time it came out and it was like, hey, we're doing like a Clone Wars show now. And it's like, oh, that's cool, like a 2D animation. And they did it in like the 3-minute chunks, and the first episode, nothing happens. I remember like that playing and being like, oh, this is really cool. Like it's like a 2D like animated Star Wars. And that first episode is them just like getting in ships and stuff. Like I don't think they even talk in the first actual episode, and it was just silent, which, for Genndy Tartakovsky, that makes a lot of sense. If Samurai Jack, for anyone who's familiar, like Samurai Jack, Primal basically has no dialogue at all. It kind of fits for him to just be like, yeah, silence. But it has some amazing stuff, and it's a lot better to watch, of course. Like I said, you clump it all together, it's really, it's a lot more fun to watch. But even outside of that, there are a couple of moments that are just like, this is awesome. Like the Mace Windu episode was amazing, where he was fighting without his lightsaber. That I always remember being a huge deal. There was the one enemy that Obi-Wan was fighting that like kept surviving because it could like basically never die. Which they brought that specific species back in Jedi Survivor, which I thought was super cool. Didn't utilize it as much as I would have hoped, because I was, in my head, I'm like, holy crap, this is like the dude from, Clone Wars, like 2D Clone Wars. And his whole thing was like, he would be blown up and all sorts of crazy stuff, and then he would still come back like a couple episodes later. It was awesome. And I was hoping that that's what we would have in the game. And unfortunately, it was like, nah, it wasn't as epic as that. But still amazing. Still really cool that they even had that reference and they actually had that specific species in there. But 2D Clone Wars was definitely a good time. Obviously, the General Grievous thing, where Mace Windu, crushed his chest and, ultimate heartburn. But that was awesome, of course. And just everything they did with that show was really, really cool. And of course, I still love both versions of Clone Wars. I think they both have some amazing things. Obviously, 3D Clone Wars had like 7 effing seasons. So it's a little hard for me to be like, oh, they didn't do anything. I know some people have their preferences, but for me, it's like bits and pieces. But as a whole, I'm obviously going to choose the one that just has more content to it, even if some of that content is like droid episodes sometimes, which sometimes can be okay, but a lot of times it's like, all right, it's all right. It is what it is. But love me some Clone Wars, love me some Star Wars Rebels. I did not watch, was it Resistance, or whichever one was actually like the prequel series to like the sequels and stuff. Never ended up watching that, even though I heard a lot of people were like, it wasn't all that. So I just haven't really gotten into it. But I do want to at least watch it, because it does count as canon. It's literally in between. I want to say it's between, is it Force Awakens? No, it couldn't be between Force Awakens, because those two movies take place right after each other. So it would have to be between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. But I do want to see those episodes and like check out that show. It's only got like 1 or 2 seasons anyway, because I don't think it was too popular, so it was kind of done real quick. But definitely want to check that out at some point. But as a whole, Star Wars is amazing. Obviously, like I mentioned a tiny bit with the Jedi games, I cannot wait for that third one. I cannot wait. I love both those games. I still remember I got the first one for Christmas, and it was like, the new Star Wars game is coming out. I remember I was randomly telling my uncle about it, like, yeah, I want to get the new Star Wars game. And we did like a family dinner where we went out somewhere or whatever. And as we were leaving, he was like, hey, come here for a second. And he just pulled out the game. This is, like on a PS4. And feels like a million years ago, but that's probably because of like just COVID time. It was like just a giant chunk of timing was just like PlayStation 5. But he just pulled it out and it was like, boom, I had Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That game was so good. The only thing that sucks about that game is that there was no New Game Plus where you could use your powers, but I fell in love with that game. Also, no fast travel was ridiculous on, it's like that one specific level. You all know, if you played it, you know what world I'm talking about. I effing hate that world. And it's not the Zepho world, but it's the other one. It's like the first one you go to. I effing hate that world because it's so big and you go underground for so long and you just have to walk. Like, I can't believe they didn't think of fast travel in that game. That was crazy. But the game was amazing. The story was phenomenal. Cal Kestis is awesome. BD1 became my favorite droid in all of Star Wars. I love BD1. If they kill him off in this third game, I'm gonna have to hurt somebody. But I love BD1. He instantly, I was like, this is my favorite droid in Star Wars. Like, it's BD1 100%. I was hyped when they had the BD droid in Mando season 3. I was like, holy crap, they got a BD droid. It wasn't BD1, but it was a BD droid, and I was like, man, I love that little dude. So love those games. Can't wait for the third one. Love the second one. I actually do like the second one more than I like the first one. I know a lot of people feel like the story was a bit tighter, and I can totally understand that. But overall, I enjoy the second one more. Like, I still think the parts of the story that are done well are insane. Like, once again, you can watch my playthrough of that if you have any interest in it. But yeah, I absolutely love those games, and I love Star Wars as a whole. But I'm excited for the future of Star Wars, movie-wise, video game-wise. I want to see all of it. I still need to get myself some really overpriced lightsabers. I do have a darksaber. Very happy with that purchase. Very happy. And I was very upset, like, every time they do sales, like, it was obviously Star Wars Day. It was like, man, buy one lightsaber, get 3 free. And every time I see that, I'm like, I'm so poor, but I want that so bad. I just want to upgrade. I have, like, a Black Series. I think I have the Black Series Luke from Return, and then I have the Signature Series Anakin from the prequels, or early Luke, depending on how you want to look at it. So I have both of those, and I want to get like a battle ready saber, like NeoPixel, all that stuff. I want to upgrade both of those. So I want to get Luke's again, and then I want to get Anakin's and have like full NeoPixel versions of those. And then I want to get Starkiller's lightsaber because I really like his. And then I should be all set. Like that's all I really need. I need those. I got my Darksaber already, and then I want to do my upgrades to like the ultimate version of Luke green, Anakin blue. Granted, Anakin was only blue, not counting him becoming Darth Vader, obviously. But that's where I'm gonna end it. My overpriced dreams for the future. I do have a buttload of Star Wars helmets as well. You can watch some random reviews. I have the Bo-Katan helmet. I don't know if I did a review for that, but I did a review for like the OG Star Wars helmets where they had the one, like the Red 5 and all that stuff, like the actual X-Wing pilots. And that one was super cool because you could switch it between the Empire sound effects and then Return. So you could do the Hoth battle and Forest Moon battle. That was awesome. I love that helmet, and it's got like lights on the side. That might be my favorite one, but I have that. I have Bo-Katan's helmet. I have Poe Dameron's helmet. That might be the only 3. And then I have like some other helmets from other things. I have like some Transformers helmets and stuff like that, but definitely love those. I have like a super old Darth Vader helmet. Sadly, I don't have the actual like cowl, like the top piece, because I gave it to my cousins and they couldn't find it. I wanted it back. Like I gave it to them years ago and I was like, that was dumb. I want my Star Wars stuff back. I don't know why I gave them that, but it was like the old one I got for Christmas. It was like the voice changer helmet from like, I don't know, mid 2000s. Sort of deal where it was like the crappy voice changer. That's the one that I have, but I don't have like I said, the actual top helmet part anymore because they couldn't find that part when I got it back. But I do have like the actual mask and stuff, and it still works. But I don't know why. I don't know what I was thinking. That was one of those weird times. I was like, I'm gonna let my little cousins have this. That was stupid. I wish I had that. I wish I had my full Darth Vader helmet right now. But that's where I'm gonna end things out. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Of course, I would love to know all of your thoughts on Star Wars. The good, the bad, the happy, the sad. Everything is crazy right now. We'll see what happens after this movie, and we will see what happens going forward in general. But I am excited to see more Star Wars. I always am. Regardless of how things go, I am excited for the next phase. I don't assume that it's going to be bad. I try to go into it hopeful, even if it comes out like The Acolyte. I'm like, hey, even that had some stuff that I enjoyed. The action was pretty decent. There's some stuff you can look into for the action that's like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But as a whole, the action was at least all right. They did kill some people, and that was a surprise. Like, it was a sad surprise, but it was still a good surprise. It was like, okay, all right. I can appreciate like a shock value moment for sure. But all in all, I'm still excited for the future of Star Wars, especially in the video games. I cannot wait to see what they do with Cal Kestis, and I can't wait to see when they eventually have him pop up in live action. I would assume they're going to use Cameron Moynihan because he's, obviously it's his actual face, but they would have to put him in a very specific era for him not to be like the old version of Cal Kestis. So very curious. At some point they're gonna do it though, because like he's a lot, like he's been in acting in live action a bunch of different things. So it's not like he's just known as voice acting. People would know him if they saw him. So I'm curious. I'm very curious how that's gonna go. But like I said, I want to know your thoughts on all things Star Wars. The good, the bad. Are you looking forward to stuff? Are you kind of just done right now? Where's your mind at when it comes to Star Wars? So I want to know all of that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.